we call the software capital of the world, but it's not software that's going to decide what India becomes, it's mining. Today, iron and aluminium are made to look like without them you can't live. You can't build roads, you can't build homes, you can't even make your food. So much aluminium wrapping, and we are being told that we consume too little aluminium in India because, we believe in things like leaves and banana leaves. You finish a meal and you give it to the cow, and that's not good enough. We should have aluminium for chips and aluminium for wrappers. And food packaging has emerged as the single biggest use of aluminium because, how many aeroplanes can you make and how many cars can you make? But all the food of the world, if it was packaged in aluminium, can you imagine how much aluminium you can use? I woke up to the crazy economy of aluminium last year when we found our government moving from being a democracy to becoming literally a police state. 70,000 troops were deployed in areas where mining is happening because the tribals are saying, no, we won't give up our land. And we have laws that give tribals the right to stay on their land. We have a law called the Panchayati Raj Extension to Scheduled Areas, which basically is local democracy, which makes the local community the highest authority to decide what happens to people's resources. And this law was passed in 1996, and one after the other, community after community said, no, we don't want the steel plant. We have good enough forests. We don't want this mine. We'd rather have our homes. And that's when the mining industry and the government started to really declare war against the tribals. New processes were unleashed. Directly the police arresting innocent tribals protesting to defend their land. And in the heartland of India, which is a region called Bastar and is now part of a new state called Chhattisgarh, the day the MOUs with the mining companies were signed, the next day a new militia appeared called Salva Judum, which means the purification movement, which was of tribals. They were armed and they were now killing other tribals, their brothers. And we realized that the only way to deal with it was make it visible. Make visible what was happening to the tribals and make visible what was happening in terms of the new violence in tribal areas. The violence that the state was creating along with the corporations, but also the response from the tribals where the Maoist and Naxalite movement started to grow. If they couldn't get their rights defended peacefully, they were going to arm themselves. 40% of India is today under Maoist rule. They call it the red zone. 40%. That's nearly half. Not governed by the state. And the more they lose territory, the more they become violent and push more people into becoming armed extremist movements because it's the only way people see as defending themselves when democracy is being killed. So we organized an independent people's tribunal and got movements from every part of the country. This was done exactly a year, in April last year. The movement fighting the mining of bauxite in this area called Niyamgiri. The Niyamgiri means the mountain that upholds the sacred law. And for the ancient Dongriya tribe, this is for real. And they said, if you tear this mountain down for mining bauxite, we are finished as a culture. Because everything that has meaning for us is defined by this mountain. But not just cosmologically, also ecologically, it's a source of 32 streams. Amazing diversity. They brought mangoes for me, I think 38 kinds of mangoes. And do you remember last year, towards the end of the year, maybe October, in Hungary there was a leak from an aluminium plant, what they call the red ponds. You remember the images? Now the red ponds are the waste of aluminium production. For every 2 tons of bauxite mined, 1 ton becomes that toxic, lethal waste. which kills people. 6 people were killed in Hungary. More than 6 have been killed in the aluminium smelter of Vedanta near the Niyamgiri mountain in a village called Lanjigar. Aluminium is made to look so efficient, but if you look at what it takes to make it, for every ton of aluminium produced, 1,200 tons of water are used. 13,500 kilowatts of electricity is used, which mines coal somewhere else. And 13.1 tons of carbon dioxide are put into the atmosphere. If you start adding all of this, start adding the human rights violation, aluminium is too costly to have in our lives. And instead of pushing people with subsidies, with promotions to have more and more aluminium, we should really be reducing the aluminium use. Vedanta has got the government of India to declare a target of 15 kilograms per capita. We have 1 kilogram per capita. It's too little, we are too primitive. We'll be an advanced economy if we consume 15 kilograms per capita. And that makes everyone a consumer of these devastating materials. It's not about what we need. It is about pure greed. It's the greed of corporations that want to push the consumption of these metals to sell the products they want to sell. But there's a higher level greed, which is in investment. I saw a lecture by a big management guru who was telling students of management in Cambridge to say, forget the city. That's not where you'll make money. It's commodities. And commodities are the minerals, they're the metals, they're our food, and they're now even the land. So the idea that the financial world is turning to metals and minerals as the place for growth, and that too is driving mining on a scale that's way beyond human need. If we think of the world as just material and matter, we will plunder, we will grab, we will fight for ownership. There has to be violence when we think of the world as matter. But when we think of the world and the earth as the very condition of our life, and we have a creative unity with her, then we will find joy in lowering our consumption, taking less to experience higher levels of joy. And I think that's the challenge that we have in starting to connect the dots around the issue of mining. When you realize this is all part of an amazing integrity of creation, then you calculate every step of the disruption. I think we are at a threshold for humanity. And that threshold of humanity is either one way total destruction, and we be part of it through not knowing and not acting, and the other side, a huge movement for conservation coming from our awareness of what pure, sheer consumerism does in terms of making us participants in an economy of greed and an economy of violence. And I personally have a lot of, I know the momentum is huge for the destruction, and these corporations are big, and the financial ripoff has become so big and so high. But I do believe that every citizen who's awake is that much more power for protecting the earth, her rights, and the rights of all people.